and who will make the first actual landing on the moon. All have made space flights before. They are Neil Armstrong, a civilian, who will be the commander of Apollo 11. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Michael Collins, who will be the pilot of the command module, and Air Force Colonel Edwin Aldrin, who will pilot the lunar landing module. The plans call for Armstrong and Aldrin to land on the moon while Collins circles the moon in the Apollo mothership. Their mission is expected to be flown sometime in July, thus fulfilling President Kennedy's pledge to land men on the moon in this decade of the 60s. Jules Bergman reports from Washington.
With the White House East Room jammed with hundreds of officials, President Johnson escorted astronauts Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders to the ceremonies honoring them. Their lunar orbit flight, the President made clear, was a triumph for all nations.
The flight of Apollo 8 gives all nations a new and a most exciting reason to join in man's greatest adventure. If there is an ultimate truth to be learned from this historic flight, it may be this. There are few social or scientific or political problems which cannot be solved by men if they truly want to solve them together. And that applies to the heavens or to hunger, to moonshots or to model cities. Gentlemen, I'm quite proud to live in a country that has produced men like you and produced men who lifted you into the heavens. God bless you. I wish you and your program continued success in all the days ahead.
Then the President awarded the three astronauts the Space Agency's Distinguished Service Medal. Spacecraft Commander Frank Borman, a Renaissance man of many talents, was overwhelmed.
Mr. President, I thought that we had experienced every motion known to man in the 20 hours we spent in lunar orbit, but I must confess that I believe this was topic. And I know I speak for Jim and Bill when I say we're three grateful Americans. Grateful to you personally. We recognize your interest in your contributions to the space program of our country, and we're grateful to this wonderful country. They've supported us in every way. And although we're symbolic of the country's greatness, we certainly feel very inadequate. And we're just very, very grateful.
Astronaut Bill Anders gave the President a replica of the space suit he carried aboard Apollo 8, and Frank Borman had a surprise gift.
And Mr. President, Jim Lovell has a picture of the ranch I think you'd like to see.
That dramatic picture of Earthrise, their first view of the Earth after orbiting the moon, likely to be the picture of the century. After the White House ceremony concluded, the astronauts then appeared at noon before a joint session of Congress, which wildly applauded them for 3 minutes. In an unusual display of emotion, the three astronauts waved back. The applause picked up again in a unique demonstration of admiration by the Congress for the three men who had ended the cruel year of 1968 on a note of triumph for America.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, members of Congress, and distinguished guests, you're looking at three very grateful and three very humble Americans.
Humble and grateful, but Borman still managed to poke fun at the Supreme Court justices watching.
One of the things that was truly historic was that we were able to get good Roman Catholic Bill Anders to read the first 4 verses of the King James Version of the Bible. But now that I see the gentleman here in the front row, I'm not sure we should have read the Bible at all.
And Frank Borman eloquently summed up all that had made it possible: present sacrifices and past learning.
When we say this is an American achievement, we really have to go back to Newton and paraphrase him, I'm sure in a poor way, but say we stood on the shoulders of giants. Because how can anyone think of Apollo 8 without thinking of Galileo, or Copernicus, or Kepler, or Tsiolkovsky, or Orbis, or Goddard, or Kennedy, or Grissom, or White, or Chaffee, or Komarov? We truly stood on the shoulders of giants. Exploration really is the essence of the human spirit. And to pause, to falter, to turn our back on the quest for knowledge is to perish. And I hope that we never forget that. Now, I would be a very shallow human being if I didn't confess to you that while I'm deeply committed to our space exploration program and to unlocking the secrets of the universe and of the moon, I'm even more deeply committed to the future of this country and this earth. As we unfold the secrets of the universe, you will look to the scientists and the engineers. But for the future of this country, this great country, and this good earth, we will look to you.
More honors lie ahead, and more difficult and dangerous flights such as Apollo 8 before America gets to the moon. Gorman, Lovell, Andrews, men for all seasons.
At a news conference later today, the astronauts reported on their mission and discussed flights still to be made. Astronaut Frank Borman today was promoted to be Deputy Director of Flight Crew Operations. That's an assignment that removes him from further space flights. At a news conference in the State Department, Borman talked about it.
Before I flew this flight, I talked to the people in NASA and told them that this would, in all likelihood, be the last flight that I'd like to attempt. And the reason, I suppose, are many, but quite frankly, I, as you know, went down to on the fire, investigated the 204 fire, and I participated in helping to work on the spacecraft, and I had a very strong desire to fly the Apollo spacecraft from a personal standpoint, because I've been involved so deeply in the changes and the results of the investigation. But I've never felt that this was that a personal desire should influence the final outcome of the program. So I felt that having had this successful flight and having worked my way through it, that I would step aside. Yes, we wanted to talk about Jim and Bill about that.
In my own personal view about space flight, I'm rather addicted to it. I feel it's a great opportunity to further explore, and I'm available. My professional curiosity makes me want to get a little closer look at the lunar surface, and also to spend a little more time in Earth orbit.
It's said that Gus Grissom has severe doubts about the quality of his craft. Is that true? And if you had had any doubts about your craft, would you have gone up in it? And secondly, when, if ever, do you think a reporter might be allowed to go on his show?
I never talked to Gus about his idea of the quality of Apollo. I'm sure that he wouldn't have been in spacecraft 12 if he didn't think it was a safe spacecraft.
There's a rumor that Mother on the Cape was saved.
There probably is a rumor. I don't know whether it's founded or not. But I think it's important, and I had this feeling that when we testified after the fire investigation, that although we were completely candid and completely honest as to what we found and to what we thought, that the people never really believed it. And that was one of the things that gave me such a strong personal desire to prove that what we said had been the truth. Now, I'm not suggesting to you that we won't have additional tragedies in this program. But what I would like to submit, and what we tried to make the point, is that this program is worth the price we have to pay. I don't know when the reporters will go, but I hope they all wear mini skirts when they do.
Tomorrow, the 3 Apollo 8 astronauts will be guests of honor in New York City for a day that will include a ticker-tape parade through lower Manhattan.
Astronaut James Lovell spoke about going to the moon and coming back.
Distinguished people from the good Earth. Frank, of course, will tell you the thoughts and feelings that we had during our flight. But I did have just one thought, and this thought occurred to me when I came back. I stepped out of the house a few days later and looked up at the moon, and I could scarcely believe that I was there. A sense of pride, a feeling of satisfaction and achievement came over me. And I thought to myself, is some American in this great country who cannot, when he sees the moon, not feel the same as I do, and say to himself, we were there.
No question in anyone's mind that we have many serious problems here on the Earth and in this country. I'm not sure you'll solve them all by neglecting the quest for knowledge that we're undertaking. And certainly within NASA, in my own station in NASA, I'm not the one that makes the decisions as to how many funds or how much money will be spent where. All I'm saying is that the next administration, I hope that the next administration will carefully consider not only the technical and the scientific value of this program, but also the value, the almost nebulous value that it has to the spirit of this country.
Nebulous means vague or cloudy, and Frank Borman's use of this word may be the only mistake he made today. Washington, officially and politically, feels that the moon flight was of more than nebulous value, and today's astronautical visit will probably help to keep those congressional appropriations rolling in to the space agency.